Okay, so we are going to get into something today that is, it's going to sound completely like science fiction, but it is actually just the headlines of the last 18 months, if you know how to read them properly. We're talking about a literal split in the fabric of reality, or at least the reality of the people currently building the future. But before we touch the third rail of civilization here, I have to say this very clearly, and I need you to really hear me on this one. This is not financial advice.
Right. Definitely not.
We are going to be talking about the future of the human race. We are talking about the Church of Compute. We are talking about ideology and religion disguised as technology. We are absolutely not talking about your stock portfolio. Do not go buy a server farm or short a chip company because of what we say here. We are just two people reading the writing on the wall.
That is exactly right. We are observing the machinery. We are not betting on it. And frankly, the machinery is getting dangerous enough that betting on it feels a bit like betting on the weather during a Category 5 hurricane.
Exactly.
Okay.
So let's unpack this. We are looking at something called the AI schism. And I don't use that word lightly. A schism isn't just a disagreement, right? It's not like, I like Coke and you like Pepsi. A schism is historical. It is heavy. It's like 1054.
The Great Schism.
Right. The Great Schism that split the church into East and West. That was a religious war over the nature of the Holy Spirit, over the fundamental dogma of existence. What we are seeing right now in Silicon Valley is a religious war. But instead of fighting over the nature of God, these guys are fighting over the nature of the God they're literally trying to build.
It is a religious-style split. That is the most accurate way to frame it. You have two distinct camps that have formed, and they genuinely, honestly believe the other side is going to destroy the world. This isn't a corporate rivalry. This is a crusade. One side wants to build a God, like an omnipotent, all-knowing entity that solves everything. And the other side, well, they want to build a librarian.
A librarian. That is such a perfect, unassuming image. But to understand why people are fighting over gods and librarians, you have to understand ground zero. You have to understand San Francisco right now. There was this description in Empire of AI, which was one of the main sources we pulled for this deep dive about the cognitive dissonance of that city. And man, if you've been there recently, you feel it in your teeth.
It is a fascinating backdrop for the end of the world, isn't it? You have this city with these quaint aesthetics, the Victorians, the colorful Spanish-style architecture, the perfectly ripe avocados at the farmer's market, the blue bottle lattes that cost $9. It looks like paradise. You have young people making top 5% salaries fresh out of college, hiking in Big Sur on the weekends, wearing their Patagonia vests.
It sounds like the absolute dream. I mean, it sounds perfect. But then you walk out the door of your Series A startup.
Right. You walk out and the dream completely collapses. There are people shooting up drugs right in front of the subway station. You have the unhoused peeing on the sidewalks literally blocks away from offices where they have a happiness engineer catering organic lunch. It is this profound contradiction. The tech industry professes to be changing the world, building artificial general intelligence AGI that will solve all human suffering. But they are stepping over the immediate human suffering at their own front door.
That image, just stepping over the homeless man to go build the machine that saves humanity. That breeding ground, that exact dissonance is where this schism comes from. It's like they looked at the streets and said, well, we can't fix the housing crisis. It's too hard. So let's just build a digital god instead. So our mission today is to unpack this mess. We're going to look at the great corporate split between OpenAI and Anthropic. We're going to look at the ideological war between the accelerationists and the safety crowd. And we are going to get into the technical reality. Are we actually building a brain or just a really expensive parrot?
And we absolutely have to talk about Japan, too, because while the West is having a literal religious war, Japan is just trying to find a coworker.
I love that part so much. The ordinary Japanese view it as such a palate cleanser. But let's start with the heavy hitters. The great corporate split. This is the soap opera of the century. OpenAI versus Anthropic. Who are the players here? Break this down.
So in one corner, you have OpenAI. The face of this is Sam Altman. And if you follow tech even a little bit, you know Sam. He is often described as the ultimate operator. A salesman, he is sharp, he is charismatic, and he is extremely aggressive. They are the speed and growth faction.
These are the guys who took the Microsoft money, right?
Billions of dollars. We are talking about a company that raised $6.6 billion in venture capital in 2024 alone. Their valuation is hovering around $157 billion. Just to give you context for that number, that is bigger than the GDP of many countries. They are heavily tied to Microsoft and the Azure cloud platform. Their goal is AGI, artificial general intelligence, that supposedly benefits humanity, but they deeply believe the way to get there is through technical leadership.
Which is basically code for we have to be first.
Exactly. You have to build the most powerful system first. You have to win.
God.
Because if you don't win, someone worse might win. So they operate on this capped profit model, which sounds nice on paper, but they're raising capital like a voracious beast.
And then you have the divorce.
The divorce is critical. This is where Dario Amodei comes in. He wasn't just some guy on the outside. He was the VP of research at OpenAI. He was inside the machine. He saw the code. And he, along with his sister Danielle Amodei and several others, led an exodus. They just left.
Which is wild. Why did they leave? They were at the top of the hottest company on Earth. They basically walked away from a winning lottery ticket.
They believed Altman was prioritizing speed and commercialization over safety. Specifically, the Microsoft deal really rubbed them the wrong way. They felt that bringing in that level of massive corporate pressure would inevitably compromise the safety of the AI. So they founded Anthropic.
And Anthropic is the safety faction. They have this concept they push called constitutional AI.
Constitutional AI is their flagship philosophy. The idea is that you give the AI a specific set of rules, a constitution, values that it absolutely must adhere to. It is an attempt to solve what they call the alignment problem by explicitly coding in goodness.
But let's be real for a second here. Look at it this way. That is basically paternalism in code, isn't it? It is a small group of highly paid people in San Francisco deciding what the constitution of the global intelligence should be for everybody else.
It absolutely is paternalism. It raises a huge question: whose constitution? Whose values are we hard-coding into the machine? But from a market perspective, it created a massive segmentation. One group, OpenAI, became the symbol of the Wild West, moving fast, breaking things, pushing capabilities to the absolute edge. The other group, Anthropic, became the safe and sanitized option. They want a reliable, steerable system.
And the rhetoric between these two sides, it is not just, hey, our product is better than yours. It is literally, your product is going to kill everyone on Earth. Dario Amodei gave this interview where he talked about existential danger. He wasn't mincing words at all.
No, he calls it a violent global adolescence. That is a terrifying phrase if you really think about it. He predicts AI could surpass human intelligence in almost all fields very, very soon. He describes a country of geniuses in a data center. Imagine that. A server farm, and that has the collective raw intelligence of a nation of Einsteins.
And his worry is that this country of geniuses helps bad actors create biological agents or overthrow governments.
Exactly. This brings us to a term we really need to define for people. P-doom.
P-doom, the probability of doom.
It is the mathematical probability that AI will literally end human civilization. For guys like Amodei, their P-doom is non-zero. They take it incredibly seriously. They view the current phase as a mix of high intelligence, growing agency, and poor controllability, which they say is a literal recipe for disaster.
But then you look across the aisle and you have Demis Hassabis over Google DeepMind. He is looking at the exact same technology, the exact same country of geniuses, and he sees something totally fundamentally different.
He sees a golden era. He is talking about radical abundance, curing diseases, discovering entirely new energy sources, extending human lifespans indefinitely. He even talked about potentially colonizing the galaxy by 2030.
2030, that is practically tomorrow. So we have one guy saying we might accidentally create a super virus and die, and the other guy saying we are going to live among the stars in 5 years. That's the schism right there.
And it breaks companies apart. Look at the governance crisis at OpenAI. You remember when the board tried to fire Sam Altman?
How could anyone forget that weekend? It was absolute chaos on Twitter.
That chaos was a feature, not a bug, of this schism. The corporate structure of OpenAI was set up to fail from the start. You had a nonprofit board controlling a for-profit entity. The board had a fiduciary duty to humanity, not to the shareholders. They actually had a clause in their charter that said if a competitor comes close to AGI, OpenAI must stop competing and assist them.
That is insane. Imagine Ford having a clause that says if Chevy gets close to making a perfect car, Ford has to stop the assembly line, send all their engineers over, and go help Chevy bolt the tires on. It makes no business sense.
It makes no business sense, which shows you that this isn't just business, it is ideological. And that leads us perfectly to the broader culture war happening in the Valley, the cults, if you will.
Oh, the cults. We have the D-cells and the Ichik crowd. I see these terms everywhere now.
Yeah.
Ichik is all over the timelines.
Let's start with the D-cells, or the decelerationist. These are the safety crowd, largely rooted in the effective altruism movement.
EA, effective altruism. This started with philosophers, right?
Yes, Oxford philosophers like William MacAskill, and it was heavily funded by Silicon Valley wealth like Dustin Moskovitz and famously Sam Bankman-Fried before his massive fall from grace. The core logic of EA is expected value. They argue that even if the probability of AI destroying the world is incredibly low, say 1%, the outcome is so catastrophic, meaning human extinction, that it has infinite negative value. Therefore, it is perfectly logical to prioritize preventing that risk above literally all else.
So they are the ones constantly calling for a pause. They want global treaties. They look at OpenAI and think, you guys are playing with fire in a room full of gasoline.
Exactly. They are generally the left-centric view in this specific dynamic, advocating for strict regulation, government oversight, and control. They fear an uncontrolled AI becomes a monopoly rent-seeker or a literal god that just crushes us without a second thought.
And then there's equative accelerationism. This is the fun one. Beff Jesus.
Beff Jesus.
Yeah.
His real name is Guillaume Verdon, a former Google quantum engineer and theoretical physicist. He is the main persona behind this entire movement.
Accelerate or die. That is their whole motto.
It is based on thermodynamics, specifically Jeremy England's theory. They believe the universe intrinsically wants to increase entropy, energy usage. Life itself is just a mechanism to increase entropy. Therefore, AI is not an artificial anomaly. It is the next natural stage of cosmic evolution.
So they think we are just the biological bootloader for the machine.
In a way, yes. It is a form of hypersocial Darwinism. Their view is basically winners win, losers go extinct. If AI replaces us, that is just evolution doing its job. But they are also massive techno-optimists. They strongly believe unrestricted technological progress is the absolute only solution to poverty, war, and climate change.
This reminds me of that manifesto Mark Andreessen dropped, the Techno-Optimist Manifesto. It was like a declaration of war against the pessimists.
It was a battle cry. He wrote, "We are being lied to." He argues that society is constantly told to be angry and pessimistic about tech, but tech is actually the only perpetual source of growth we have. His key argument is actually a moral one, a very aggressive moral one. He says preventing AI existence is a form of murder.
Murder. That is a heavy word to throw around in a tech debate.
He means it because of the lives AI could have saved. If you delay a cure for cancer by 10 years because you were afraid of the AI getting too smart, you are morally responsible for everyone who died of cancer in those 10 years. That is the fundamental Aches argument.
That is a crazy strong argument if you buy into the premise. So Eek says regulation is just D-cells trying to stop the techno-capital machine. Safety says unregulated AI is a literal death sentence. And meanwhile, the governments are looking at this and trying to step in.
The EU AI Act is the big one here. It heavily emphasizes safety and ethics. If you are a company following 8 principles, just letting the model rip without guardrails, you risk astronomical fines. Up to 7% of your global turnover. You risk being completely kicked out of the EU market.
So there is a massive real-world financial risk to being a cowboy in this space. But there's also this other risk we see, which is ethics washing.
Right, pretending to be safe, pretending you deeply care about the Constitution while you are secretly accelerating as fast as you humanly can to beat the other guy. It is an incredibly messy, hypocritical landscape.
Let's go deeper. We have talked about the companies and the cults, but there is a deeper philosophical split here that underpins all of this. It is not just about computers, it is about how we fundamentally view the world, the business versus humanities schism.
This goes way back. You can actually trace it back to the 19th century, the split between the marginalists and the Marxists.
Okay, hold on. Break that down for the people in the back. Simplify that. Marginalist versus Marxist.
So the business view, the marginalist view, is largely ahistorical. It focuses entirely on efficiency, optimization, and profit maximization in the present moment. It looks at a system and asks, how do we make this process 10% faster? How do we maximize utility right this second? It treats the entire world as a math problem to be solved.
That sounds exactly like every tech engineer I have ever met.
Exactly, because it is the engineering mindset applied to economics. But the humanities view, the Marxist or dialectical view, is historical. It focuses on human agency, deeply ingrained power structures, and a concept called alienation. It asks, who does this technology actually hurt? Does it detach the worker from the inherent value of their work?
Alienation. That is the key word right there. When you use AI to generate a legal brief, the lawyer is alienated from the craft of law. When you use AI to write a song or paint a picture, The artist is completely alienated from the actual human act of creation.
And this leads directly to AI-driven capitalism. If you take the business view to its logical extreme, you get the absolute automation of everything.
Yeah.
But the humanities view warns us about the horrific social cost of that. Look at the justice system, for example. We have this concept called justice experiences.
Right, and the danger there is terrifying. The danger is that rich people will get human lawyers who actually understand nuance, empathy, and context, and poor people will just get AI justice. They get an automated resolution spat out by a server.
It creates a bifurcated reality, a two-tiered society. And there is a really interesting equation here regarding human satisfaction. We constantly compare our reality to an ideal. AI massively increases the ideal. It shows us absolute perfection. It generates perfect images, perfect code, perfect answers. This drastically increases the denominator in the equation. When the ideal goes way up, but your actual day-to-day reality stays the exact same, it creates a massive gap. You become deeply dissatisfied.
So AI is literally making us unhappy just by showing us how perfect things could be, while we are still stuck in our messy, flawed biological lives, paying rent and sitting in traffic.
Precisely. And economically, this ties into Joseph Schumpeter's concept of creative destruction. The Guest crowd absolutely loves this theory. They believe old industries, coding, copywriting, maybe even law and medicine must be aggressively destroyed to create new, hyper-efficient ones.
But are we actually seeing the new ones yet? Because I keep hearing about this thing called the Salo paradox.
Ugh, the Salo paradox. We see the computers everywhere except in the productivity statistics. That was famously said by Robert Solow in 1987, but it is incredibly true again today. We are spending hundreds of billions of dollars on NVIDIA chips, but the overall global economy isn't suddenly growing at 10% a year. Why? Because we are completely stuck in the schism. We are fighting tooth and nail over safety versus speed, rather than figuring out how to actually integrate this revolutionary stuff into the real economy.
We are buying all the Ferraris, but we don't have any roads to drive them on. Speaking of the Ferraris, let's talk about the engine, the technical reality.
Yeah.
Because there is so much hype right now. We talk about AI like it is a person. People say Claude thinks this or GPT wants that. But what is it really?
This is what we call the big lie, or the technical reality check. At their core, current models, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, are what researchers explicitly call stochastic parrots.
Stochastic parrots. I love that term so much. It sounds like an indie rock band.
It is a great term. It means they are simply predicting the next word based on pure probability, which is correlation, not understanding.
So if I say the sky is, the AI says blue, not because it knows what physics is or what eyes are or what the atmosphere actually does. It says blue just because statistically blue follows is when sky is the subject of the sentence.
Exactly. It is a mirror. It is not a window. It purely reflects the massive data set it was trained on. This is the fundamental debate between correlation and causality. The AI has absolutely mastered correlation. It knows that event A usually happens with event B, but it does not have the slightest clue why A causes B.
And this is exactly why we might be hitting a wall. I see researchers saying we are hitting a physical limit, where just throwing more data at the model does not magically make it smarter.
Right. To get true intelligence, we need causal inference. We need machines that actually understand cause and effect. Without that, you run headfirst into the Lucas critique.
The Lucas critique, that is a complex economics term, right? Break that one down.
Yes. Simplified, the Lucas critique says you cannot predict the future based on past data if the fundamental rules of the game change. Since AI is trained entirely on past human data, it completely fails when the world shifts in a new direction. If a massive black swan event happens, or if the fundamental rules of the global economy change overnight, the AI is looking at a map that no longer matches the territory. It is useless.
So it is basically driving a car at 100 miles an hour by only looking in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
That is terrifying. If we were talking about putting it in charge of the stock market or the power grid or nuclear weapons.
It is terrifying, and that is why the schism isn't just about high-level philosophy. It is about whether the technology actually works the way these tech CEOs are promising it does.
Okay, so we have the cowboys and the safety patrol in the West fighting this apocalyptic war over this. But let's look east for a minute. Japan. They have a totally different vibe when it comes to this.
Japan is fascinating because they are largely ignoring the whole God versus Terminator war. They don't have the luxury of sitting around having existential dread because they have a very real, very immediate demographic crisis. The silver democracy.
They are getting incredibly old.
They are aging rapidly. They literally do not have enough young people to run their society. So they view AI entirely through the lens of Kiyosei, which translates to Symbiosis.
Symbiosis, so not a human replacement, not a digital god, but a partner.
A helper, a colleague. They see AI as a vital tool to help an aging population maintain their standard of living. They approach it with the traditional philosophy of monozukuri, or craftsmanship.
Craftsmanship, I like that.
Think of it like a master carpenter getting a sharper chisel. If you are a master carpenter, you don't fear a sharper chisel. You welcome it because it helps you make things perfectly. Japan is pragmatically using the tech to fix their massive labor shortage. While we argue about the end of the world on Twitter, they are using robots to help grandmothers in nursing homes.
That is such a healthier, more grounded way to look at it. It is practical.
It is very practical. And it is a great reminder that culture dictates technology just as much as technology dictates culture.
So let's pivot to the money. Because at the end of the day, someone has to pay for all these server farms. Where is the smart money going right now? We mentioned earlier that this absolutely isn't financial advice, but we can report on the trends.
There is a massive shift happening right now. We call it the post-AI investment cycle. Smart investors are moving rapidly away from general assistance.
Why is that? I thought everyone wanted the ultimate general assistant that can do everything.
Because the big tech monopolies, Microsoft, Google, Meta, have that completely covered. They have the billions to burn on general models. A startup cannot compete with them on building a generic chatbot. So in niche is king, we are seeing the explosive rise of vertical AI.
Vertical AI. So AI specifically trained for lawyers, AI for doctors, AI for plumbers.
Exactly. Look at a company like Hardy. It is an AI built specifically for the legal sector. Their funding history is absolutely wild. They raised $5 million in 2022, then $21 million in 2023, then $100 million in 2024, and then in 2025 they raised $460 million.
Wow. From $5 million to nearly $500 million in 3 years. That is staggering.
Because it actually works. It is highly specialized. It is tailored. It deeply integrates with specific legal workflows. It is not trying to write a bad poem and also solve a math problem. It is trying to win a complex court case, and it does that very well.
But there is a massive looming storm cloud over all this money, isn't there? The infrastructure debt.
This is the scary number that nobody wants to talk about. In 2025, big tech Amazon, Alphabet, Microsoft, Meta raised $108 billion in debt. Just debt, not equity, pure debt. Just to buy chips and build data centers.
They are literally mortgaging the house to buy NVIDIA chips.
And the risk is what analysts call the compute crunch. Bain and Company released a report predicting that AI companies might need $2 trillion in revenue to justify these astronomical infrastructure costs. But the current revenue projections, they are falling short by about $800 billion.
That is an $800 billion hole. That is the sound of a massive bubble popping if I've ever heard one.
It creates immense, unimaginable pressure. You have massive CapEx capital expenditure and nowhere near enough revenue to cover the interest payments yet. This is exactly why the schism actually matters financially. If e-check is right and we get radical abundance and superintelligence, maybe that revenue magically appears. If the safety crowd is right and we have to pause training, that debt bomb explodes and takes the market with it.
So let's forecast this out. Put your prediction hat on. What happens in the next year, 3 years, 10 years? Give me the timeline.
Short term, 1 to 3 years. We are looking at a brutal consolidation phase. Small firms are going to go bankrupt left and right. If you aren't Harvey, if you aren't the absolute undisputed leader in your specific niche, you get completely wiped out. Big tech is going to hoard all the H100 chips. Prices for compute will stay artificially high. It is going to be a bloodbath for the little guys.
It is survival of the fittest again. Social Darwinism playing out in the venture capital market.
Exactly. Long term, 10 plus years out. I strongly believe we move towards sovereign AI.
Sovereign AI, like nationalized AI models.
Yes, countries are going to wake up and realize they absolutely cannot rely on a model run by a quirky company in San Francisco to run their critical national infrastructure. France will want a French model trained on French values. India will want an Indian model. They will realize they need schism-proof models that deeply protect their unique culture and their local economy. They won't want paternalism in code coming from a handful of guys in California.
That makes total sense when you think about it globally. Why would China or Saudi Arabia or Brazil trust a model that has American constitutional values hard-coded into its very architecture?
They won't. They absolutely won't. So the global internet creates a deeply fragmented intelligence landscape.
You know, when we step back and look at this whole crazy picture, the corporate split, the ideological cults screaming at each other, the technical reality of stochastic parrots versus causal inference, it all comes down to one thing for me. The schism between OpenAI and Anthropic proves that values are the new features.
That is a profound insight. It used to be entirely about speed or cost or user interface. Now, the main selling point of the most advanced technology on Earth is, what does this AI actually believe?
Exactly. It is insane. People are asking, is your AI woke? Is your AI based? Is your AI safe? Is your AI uncensored? Those are literally the product features now.
And if we connect this to the biggest picture possible, e-youth versus safety is really just the modern, hyper-accelerated version of the oldest political debate in human history. Freedom versus security.
Boom. There it is. Freedom, which is eachling pushing the boundaries, versus security, which is the D-cells trying to keep us alive.
Yeah.
We are just fighting the exact same human battles with brand new, incredibly dangerous silicon weapons.
And the stakes are just, they are everything. The stakes are the future of the human race.
It is a beautiful disaster, isn't it?
It really is.
Just make sure you are on the side that wins. Or at least the side that doesn't go completely bankrupt trying to buy chips.
Or the side that doesn't get turned into a paperclip by a rogue superintelligence.
Right. Let's definitely avoid the paperclip maximizer.
Okay.
Listen, if you like this talk, please subscribe and like this channel. We are going to be right here watching the schism unfold, keeping track of the madness so you don't have to do it alone. It's a beautiful disaster. Just make sure you're on the side that wins.
Stay curious. We will keep digging into the data.
We'll see you all in the next deep dive.